TV series written by GHGH Certified. In The Takeover, Blue is a retired crime overlord who has been in hiding for years, trying to leave his past behind. Blue had been a notorious criminal for years, feared and respected in the underworld, and feared by many in his city. He rose to power through ruthless tactics, controlling the underground crime world with an iron fist. He was respected and feared by both his allies and enemies, as they knew that he could make or break anyone's life with a single word. Born into a family of gangsters, Blue was brought up in an environment that glorified crime and violence. However, he quickly realized that there was more to life than just bloodshed and mayhem. Despite being a crime overlord, Blue had several redeeming qualities. He had a code of conduct that he always followed, and he never harmed innocent people. He saw himself as a protector of his community, and he made sure that no harm came to the people he cared for. He was also a philanthropist, who used his ill-gotten gains to support several charities and causes. Blue was an intelligent man, with a sharp mind and an even sharper wit. He was an expert strategist, who always had a well-thought-out plan for any situation. His ability to read people was unparalleled, and he knew exactly what to say and do to gain their trust or intimidate them. Blue had a magnetic personality that drew people towards him, and he could convince anyone to do his bidding. Blue eventually grew tired of the violent lifestyle and decided to retire, despite the wealth and power that came with his position. However, Blue's reign as a crime lord came to an end when he realized the devastating effect of his lifestyle on his loved ones. He had lost several friends and family members to the violence of his world, and he knew that he needed to make a change. After years of planning, he retired from the criminal underworld and disappeared from public life. Today, Blue is a recluse, living a quiet life in a remote location. He spends his time reading, watching movies, and indulging in his hobbies. However, his reputation precedes him, and his name is still whispered in hushed tones in the criminal underworld. Many young gangsters see him as a legend and wish to follow in his footsteps. Nonetheless, Blue has no intention of returning to his past life and is content living in obscurity. However, when his long-lost family is threatened, he must come out of hiding and use his expertise to protect them. Melissa and her family are navigating through rival territory, infested with drugs and crime, in search of a new start. However, things quickly take a turn for the worse when they are discovered and kidnapped by the rival gang. The family is then held hostage as the Blue is forced to come back from his life of seclusion and take action to save them. But Blue's return to the criminal underworld also means that he must face old enemies and new ones. The Takeover Part 2. One of his fiercest rivals is a man named Marco, who is jealous of Blue's success and reputation. Marco has always been envious of Blue's power and influence and has made it his life's mission to bring him down. Marco is a ruthless criminal who will stop at nothing to achieve his goals. He sees Blue's return as an opportunity to take him out once and for all and become the new kingpin of the criminal underworld. But little does Marco know, Blue's experience and cunning are not to be underestimated. Will Blue be able to protect his family and defeat his rivals, or will Marco succeed in his quest to take over the criminal empire? Marco was the most feared and disrespectful crime leader in the city. His empire was strong and his enemies trembled at the very sound of his name. That is, until Blue came along. Blue was a new player in the game, but he had a power that Marco envied. His charisma and leadership had drawn followers to him in droves, and soon Blue overtook Marco's rise in the criminal empire. Marco couldn't stand the thought of being second best. His jealousy turned to hatred, and he hatched a plan to take down Blue once and for all. The plan was simple: kidnap Blue's family to force him out of hiding. Blue's family was his Achilles heel. They were his weakness, the ones he would do anything to protect. Marco knew this, and he saw it as an opportunity. He hired his most ruthless henchmen and gave them strict orders: find Blue's family and bring them to him. Days turned into weeks, and Marco grew more and more impatient. He knew that any delay in finding Blue's family could cost him his opportunity to take over the empire. Finally, one of his henchmen brought him the news he had been waiting for. Blue's family had been located. Marco could hardly contain his excitement. He gave the order to kidnap them, and within hours, Blue's friend Melissa and her children were in his possession. He sent a message to Blue: "Surrender yourself to me, or your family will suffer the consequences." Blue had always been a notorious figure in the world of crime. For years he had built an empire, distributing drugs and guns to those who sought them. But after a close brush with the law all arranged by Marco, Blue had decided to hang up his hat and move to the beach, where he could enjoy his golden years in peace and tranquility. But as he sat in his garden one afternoon, Blue received a letter that would shatter his newfound sense of tranquility. It was a ransom letter written by his old rival, Marco. Marco had always been one to hold a grudge, and it seemed that he was now seeking revenge for all the years that Blue had kept him at bay. Blue read the letter with a sense of foreboding. In it, Marco demanded that he pay a hefty sum of money if he ever wanted to see his wife and children again. Blue knew that he had no choice but to comply with the demands. The Takeover Part 3. He couldn't bear the thought of losing his family, the only reason he left his former life of crime. Blue was torn. He knew he couldn't let his family suffer at the hands of Marco, but he also couldn't let Marco win. He needed to come up with a plan, and fast. Blue immediately contacted his all-trusted aides and assembled a team of men. He knew that he needed to move fast before it was too late. Blue gathered his old crew, including his trusted friend, partner in crime and loyal right-hand man. The plan was to infiltrate Marco's hideout, rescue his family, and take down Marco once and for all. With the help of his loyal followers, he poured all of his energy into finding a way to rescue his family and take down Marco once and for all. The plan was to infiltrate Marco's hideout, rescue his family, and take down Marco once and for all. They made their move at midnight, and the plan went off without a hitch. The next few days were a blur of violence and chaos. There were countless battles between Blue's crew and Marco's henchmen. But in the end, Blue carries out a plan to infiltrate the enemy's lair and rescue his family. In the midst of the chaos, Blue discovers that there is a mole within his own organization who has betrayed him. He must navigate his way around the treacherous world of crime and discover who the mole is before it's too late. As Blue navigates the dangerous world of organized crime once again, he comes face to face with a colorful cast of characters, each with their own agenda. There's Sophia, a cunning and ambitious mob boss who wants to expand her empire, and her enforcer, the ruthless and violent Rocco. Then there's Ray, a young and talented hacker who owes Blue a debt and is willing to help him in any way he can. But as the stakes get higher and the danger grows, Blue begins to suspect that Ray may be hiding something from him. The criminal underworld that the retired overlord Blue had built was a complex and multi-layered system that operated with the precision of a well-oiled machine. It was made up of various criminal enterprises that included illegal gambling, drug trafficking, arms dealing, prostitution, and money laundering. After Blue retired, the management of his criminal empire fell to a group of trusted lieutenants who had worked with him for years. These individuals, led by Kane, were not your stereotypical gangsters, but rather well-educated and cunning businessmen. They were a diverse group of people who came from all walks of life. There were former bankers who had lost everything after the financial crisis, former police officers who grew disillusioned with the system, and even former politicians who had fallen from grace. What united them was a shared desire to find a way to survive in a world that didn't care about them. Despite their criminal activities, the people who ran Blue's empire were not without morals or ethics. The Takeover Part 4. They had a code of conduct that was strictly enforced, and anyone who broke it faced severe consequences. They believed in loyalty and looked after their own, which created a sense of unity within the organization. They knew that running a criminal enterprise required a keen understanding of economics, politics, and human nature. They were masters at navigating the complex web of relationships that existed between their various criminal enterprises, ensuring that the money flowed smoothly and that the authorities were kept at bay. However, the criminal underworld was not without its problems. The violent nature of the business meant that there were frequent disputes that had to be resolved. There were also external threats from rival gangs and law enforcement agencies. Running an empire also meant that there was always the risk of betrayal from within. Overall, the criminal underworld that Blue built and the people who ran it were far more complex than the sensationalized portrayal we see in media and popular culture. They were human beings with a desire to survive and thrive in a world that often left them with no other options. They made their move at midnight, and the plan went off without a hitch. The next few days were a blur of violence and chaos. There were countless battles between Blue's crew and Marco's henchmen. But in the end, as they executed their plan, they faced old enemies and obstacles that tested their loyalties. As Blue and his crew cautiously enters the dimly lit warehouse, he hears the sound of a gunshot and his heart sinks. He quickly makes his way through the maze of crates and barrels, dodging bullets and taking down henchmen along the way. When they finally reaches the center of the warehouse, he finds Melissa, her son and daughter, tied up and gagged, with Marco, their ruthless kidnappers, holding guns to their heads. Blue's eyes lock onto Marco, a notorious criminal who had crossed him years ago. "Let them go," Blue growls, his hand hovering over the gun in his waistband. Marco sneers and cocks his weapon. "You're too late, Blue. They're already dead." In a split second, Blue pulls out his gun and fires, hitting the Marco in the chest. As the man falls to the ground, Blue rushes to untie the children. Upon his return, Blue discovered that his family had been living in fear all these years, always looking over their shoulders. They were relieved to see him, but also angry for abandoning them. Blue knew he had a lot of making up to do. As he tried to mend his relationships and help his family heal, Blue couldn't help but feel the pull of the criminal underworld that he had left behind. The thrill of the heist, the adrenaline rush of taking risks, it was all still there. And when he found out that his family had become targets of a dangerous gang, he knew that he had to take action. The Takeover Part 5. Blue was able to save his family from danger and make amends for his past mistakes. And in the end, Blue emerged victorious. He rescued his family and dealt a crushing blow to Marco's empire. Blue had once again proven that he was a force to be reckoned with. The city was never the same after that. The power dynamic had shifted, and Marco was forced into hiding. But Blue knew that Marco would never stop plotting his revenge. He made a vow to always be one step ahead of him, to never let his guard down, and to always protect his family above everything else. As the dust settled, Blue had once again proven that he was a force to be reckoned with. Blue realized that retirement was never an option for him. His past and present would always be intertwined, and he had to use his skills to protect those he loved. And with his family by his side, Blue knew that he could navigate any challenge that the criminal world threw his way. But just when he thinks the worst is over, he hears a distant explosion from outside. The warehouse shakes and debris falls from the ceiling. Blue grabs the children and sprints towards the exit. He bursts through the door to find chaos and destruction on the street outside, sirens blaring, smoke rising, and police cars racing towards the scene. As Blue and his family try to escape, they're confronted by a team of armed officers, with guns drawn and orders to take them into custody. In the confusion and panic, Blue must make a decision that will determine his fate: surrender and face the consequences for his past crimes, or fight to stay alive and protect his loved ones. With all eyes on him and the fate of his family hanging in the balance, Blue raises his gun and the screen fades to black.